And I want to share with you my top 10 reasons why I believe a lot of people will not survive the upcoming food crisis. So let's get into that right now. So I made a list of some things that I wanted to talk to you about today. And we live in a very uncertain time. And I don't think that anybody has to reiterate that too much. There's a lot of very uncertain things happening. Wars, rumors of wars, earthquakes, just a lot of reasons why there might be food shortages in the near future. Right now things are fairly stable, at least here in the United States of America. And so we have some opportunities and we have some time to prepare. So number one, lack of gardening tools. I visit a lot of people in their homes from time to time, and it's interesting to me that very few people even own a hoe or a shovel or anything like that to till up the soil, good sturdy garden rake. There are some really basic tools that everybody needs if you're going to grow your own food. And so you can start, and it's not terribly expensive. Secondhand stores and thrift stores, things like that, you can find pretty inexpensive gardening tools if you keep your eyes open, and it doesn't have to take a lot of money to be prepared. Number two, lack of experience in growing things. Having a garden, being a farmer, is more than just turning over the soil and putting some seeds in the ground. There's a lot more to it than that. It takes experience. And it's not something that you're just going to figure out when you need to. A lot of people mistakenly think that what farmers do is easy and what I do on a computer is hard. But there's an entire skill set that goes along with farming techniques. And lack of experience in growing things is going to cause you trouble, a reason you may not survive. First of all, there's timing. There's a proper time and place to put certain seeds in the ground, and of course that goes along with the seasons. And you need to know what grows right in what season, and when to plant it and when to harvest it. Another is soil quality. There are different things you can do to amend the soil, but a lot of people don't know, for instance, the pH level of the soil that they're using. And unfortunately, a lot of our modern lawns, they have been poisoned with a lot of things to kill all the weeds so that the grass can grow. So what a lot of people have is they have a toxic environment. And a lot of the things that will grow in your lawn for free, like broadleaf plantains, for instance, very good edible, it's a great medicinal, and a lot of people kill it because they don't want it to grow in their yards. And so as a result, a yard that has had years and years and years of just grass growing in it is not going to be a very proper environment for growing food. The other thing you need to know about this is grow zones. Not every environment's the same. So there are certain grow zones in the United States. You can look it up online right now. You can get books on it. But there are certain plants, they're also called hardiness zones, where certain things will grow and other things will not grow so well. Some won't grow at all. And of course, the farther south you go, the easier it is to grow things. You have longer growing seasons and more sunlight, things like that. The farther north you go, the more difficult it is. Again, shorter days, shorter growing seasons, and more extreme cold weather. So all of this has to be taken into consideration if you want to survive a food crisis. Number three, you don't have enough room to grow food. Now, unfortunately for city dwellers, people that are in apartments and things like that, it kind of puts you in a difficult position. But there's a lot of people who live in areas where they literally don't have enough room to grow food. Maybe it's a condo or some kind of a homeowners association where there are restrictive rules. And those are all things you have to consider when you're looking at purchasing a property, if you haven't already, but you're looking at getting into something like that. But what you can look at is you can look at container gardening. There are all kinds of containers that you can use, from 5-gallon buckets to large clay pots and other things that you can grow it in. Even a lot of people have been very effective with using concrete blocks to make containers. You can also use these plastic totes that you can buy at almost any store that you can put dirt in, you can put some holes in the bottom to let the excess water drain out, and you can actually grow food pretty effectively in that. Another thing you can look at in this area, if you don't have enough room to grow food, is look at a neighborhood garden. Perhaps there might be an empty plot, or perhaps one of your neighbors has a very large yard, and you can go together with them and you can work the soil and plant together as sort of a joint effort, and that can work as well. Number 4, you don't have enough seeds. Now this is something that's very, very important. There are different types of seed vaults that you can get that are based on your grow zone or hardiness zone for the area that you live in. And these have a multitude of seeds. Many of them have enough seeds to plant an entire acre of survival food. But it's something you need to purchase now. You can actually even get some companies to supply seeds that are in special foil packages. They've been nitrogen purged, and so they'll store for sometimes up to 25 years or more, depending on the storage conditions. But what you're really looking for is you're looking for open pollinated heirloom seeds. This is not the standard seed that you get down at your local Tractor Supply or other stores. You need to find something that is going to faithfully reproduce itself. So many of the seeds that are put out by seed companies, they're more like an annual instead of a perennial. In other words, you have to literally plant that seed and purchase it from that company every year if you want that crop. And if you save seeds from something that is GMO, for instance, and non-heirloom, you're going to find that those plants will not breed true the following year. So you may not get any plants at all, or you may get something that is stunted or just doesn't look at all like what its parent looked like. And that's because they've been tampering with the genetics. So you need to find some open pollinated heirloom seeds, and you need to have plenty of that put back. Remember, this might not last for just a month or two. If it's a serious enough situation, it could last for years, even decades. So a person needs to have enough seeds to make sure and survive that kind of situation. Number 5, you're not near enough to a natural water source to survive a drought. Now, this little stream here, part of our property, is a wonderful little stream. It's flowing good right now. It's almost spring of the year. And so there's plenty of water right now, and it's good clean water. It's partially spring fed as well as some runoff. And so this is a nice little creek. We don't have any big farms around here. We do have some cattle, so it does need to be boiled, but it's pretty good water. However, one thing that's very important to note is that during the year, like in August especially, July, sometimes on into September, this little creek will dry out. And there won't be any water in here, just a few stagnant pools. Now, we do have a larger creek nearby, and it does flow year-round. But you need to have some sort of a natural water source. Remember, if you're trying to grow your own food and you need to water that because there's a drought, you need to have access to water. Remember that water is heavy. It's just a little over 8 pounds per gallon. And so if you're going to carry that, that's a consideration. The other thing is, do you have water buckets? Do you have something to carry that water in, more than just a cup or a pitcher from your kitchen? You're going to need something to be able to haul water in effectively. For people who have mobility issues, that means you're going to need some sort of a battery-operated vehicle that you can recharge with a solar panel, or maybe if you're out far enough in the country, some kind of a four-wheeler, a trailer, something like that, that you can actually haul significant amount of water to your house. Ideally, you need a well, a spring, a pond, a lake, perhaps a stream or a river. You need to be near some source of constant water year-round. And the only way you're going to know that is if you observe it, or if you have someone come out and you can dig a well that's deep enough to get down into the water table. Number 6, not enough canning jars, lids, and rings to store for winter. Now, if you're going to put back your own food, you're going to have a way to store it. You also have to have enough room to store it. And again, for people that live in the city and apartments and things like that, this is going to be a challenge. But you need a lot of things. Besides, you need a proper pressure canner. You can't just wet bath can everything. And so you're going to need a proper pressure canner, all the stuff that goes with it. It's not horribly expensive. It's not a lot of equipment, but you need to have it before a crisis happens. Also, it's estimated that per year, so if you think of storing enough food for a family of 4 for 1 year, it's estimated you're going to need about 1,000 quart jars. That's a lot of jars. And there's a lot of people, they'll put, 50 to 75 quarts of beans or something like that, and it looks like a lot. But when you think about how much food you go through, just look at how much packaging we throw away in the garbage. Whenever you take out the trash, most of the garbage that we put out for the garbage man to haul away is packaging. All sorts of things, from styrofoam to plastic to cardboard. There's a lot of stuff that goes into feeding us every single day. Most people like to eat 3 square meals a day if you can, and so that ends up being a lot of food. So roughly about 1,000 canning jars, quart jars you're going to need for a family of 4. And that's a lot, something you need to think about. Number 7 is a tough one. Just too many mouths to feed. You can prepare well for your family and you can try to warn your friends and neighbors, but ultimately a lot of people are not going to heed the warnings. They're going to ignore what's going on, and they're going to show up at your house. They're going to show up at your door. And, you can't feed everybody. You can have compassion on them. You can feel sorry for them. But, ultimately what happens is it's like when and I know this is a bad analogy, but if you feed a stray cat or a stray dog, they're going to keep coming back. And so if you have someone that's near you in a time of food crisis and you feed them once, as soon as they get hungry, they're going to come back and see if you'll feed them again. And this can be a problem because you can end up with way too many mouths to feed. And again, these are our family, our friends, our relatives. And so really the only solution is to try to store as much as you can and then try to bring awareness to your circle of friends and to the people that you love and are concerned about, because the more people that are prepared, the more people that have some food storage, the better off you're going to survive a crisis. So again, pretty important thing. Number 8. It looks like Spirit's going to walk into the picture. He hasn't been in too many of the videos lately, but he's doing pretty good. He's about 10 years old, but he's still around the property and keeping an eye on things. He just likes to wander around whenever I'm doing a video. So yeah, he checks things out and then wanders off. So number 8, about one of the top 10 reasons why you may not survive a food crisis, is unusual weather or environmental events. This is something that farmers and gardeners have struggled with for thousands of years. And you can have wind events. You can have a great crop of corn and heavy straight line winds, or some other event happens and you'll come out and your corn's all just laying down. And sometimes if it's not bad enough and if the corn's young enough, it can straighten back up and survive, but a lot of times it's very destructive and it doesn't recover. Of course, hail, that's another thing. If you live in an area where there's a large hail event, we've all seen pictures of them on the internet and different places where it'll just shred crops. And of course, depending on where you are in the season and how mature the plants are, you may not have time to replant and grow more crops. And if you do have time to replant and grow more crops, that's another reason why you need to have plenty of seeds. Because again, if you have a crop failure and you can get back onto the ball before fall hits and growing season's over, you might just be able to put back some food. Drought, as I mentioned before, being near a good source of constant water, drought is a huge issue. And it's something that happens, we see it periodically. Yes, we know that climate change is caused by various things, but the planet has always experienced climate change to one degree or another in different areas. 4,500 years ago, the Sahara Desert was green and beautiful. Of course, now it's a barren and desert place. So anyway, just keep that in mind. Drought is something you have to fight against. The other problem is insects. A few years ago, we had a really nice crop of green beans going. And for whatever reason, there was also a nice crop of grasshoppers. And we came out, looked at the garden one day, and the grasshoppers had just devastated the garden in the green beans. And they just ate everything up, ate the leaves and little young beans and all that kind of stuff. Now, fortunately, we're not in a survival situation. We're not right now in the middle of a food crisis. So we could just go to the store and buy more green beans. It wasn't ultimately a problem. But these are the things that you experience. And so I know that, we talk about pesticides and artificial things. You have to be careful about that. But you might want to have like some Sevin dust, or figure out other natural things that you can use with cayenne pepper and dish soap. There's things that you can do that will help keep the insects off of your plants that you're trying to grow for food for your family and for yourself during a food crisis. So you got to be aware of what insects can do. They can really tear things up. Number 9, you don't know enough about foraging or wild plant and herb identification. Of course, this is something that we teach here at the Waypoint Survival School. And it's very important that you get some training from someone who knows what they're looking at and knows what they're doing. And you should always be always adding to the repertoire of the plants that you understand and know how to use. It's better to know 10 plants that are common and widely available really well than to know just 100 plants just sort of. So you really need to get some good books, make sure they have color pictures. If you can, get a book that shows the plant in different stages of development. What does it look like in the spring, in the summer, and then later on in the fall? Because there's different parts of wild plants that are edible and useful in different seasons of the year. And so if you're not aware of that, you can misidentify a plant. There are some poisonous lookalikes. You have to be really careful that you know what you're doing. Of course, Christopher McCandless, everybody's familiar with that story. He went up to Alaska and he ended up dying in an old abandoned school bus that had been turned into sort of a camp, had a stove and all that in it. And he had spent a lot of time outdoors. He had a lot of experience, but from what they think happened to him, they think he misidentified a wild plant and it ended up killing him. So something you have to be really aware of. And along that line, I know there's a lot of people, they love mushrooms, but there's not a lot of nutrition in mushrooms. And if you spend a lot of your time, like we have here, a lot of rugged territory, and if you spend a lot of your time traipsing up and down these hills looking for, 100 calories or 200 calories in a pile of mushrooms, you're going to waste more calories than what you're going to get back from your meal. And of course, I know there are some big types, the giant puffball mushroom, and of course, chicken of the woods. There's different types of mushrooms that are big, and if you can find them and harvest them, of course, morels, different times of the year when those are available, only specific seasons, again, knowing seasonality. But outside of some of those major groupings, mushrooms can be misidentified. They're sometimes misidentified by experts. And people have died from trying to eat mushrooms. You're far better off to forage other plants and to understand more about your environment. And make sure, as I said, that you get a book. It's got good color pictures and has good descriptions as well as color photographs, not line drawings, because folks, it's so easy to misidentify some things, and it's your health. I have a good friend who was trained in the military, and he told me this. When they were taking their foraging classes, he said, you can eat almost anything that moves. It's plants that'll kill you. And I think that's something really good to remember. Number 10, poor fishing, hunting, and trapping skills. I talk to people and they say, when the time comes, I'll live off rabbits and squirrels. And it's funny when you talk to people like that, like, have you ever dispatched a rabbit humanely? Have you ever processed it? Do you know how to skin it? Do you know how to cook it over the fire without burning it to a crisp? And a lot of people, it's easy to be an armchair survivalist. You have this idea in your head and you're just going to rise to the occasion. But the truth of it is that when a crisis occurs, you're not going to rise to the occasion. You will always fall to the level of your training. And if you have no training, you can fall all the way to the bottom and not survive. So I think it's very important that fishing and trapping and hunting, all of these are skills that need to be developed to some degree or another. And of course, remember that fishing, it's the easiest source of protein out in the wilderness. And I know some people don't like fish, but if you're hungry enough, you can probably learn to tolerate it. Of course, with that, you also need the tools and the abilities. For instance, if you're going to be a bow hunter, unless you know how to make self bows and how to make and fletch your own arrows and make your own arrowheads, you're going to have to lay in a pretty good supply of arrows, extra bow strings. If you use a compound bow, you may not be able to go to a place and get it restrung if the bow breaks or one of the limbs break. So again, this is a concern. You're going to have a proper contraption to put that in that can bend those arms. There's things that they make, but they're expensive if you can't make it to a bow shop so that you could put a new bowstring on. So again, these things are important. If you're going to hunt with a crossbow, same consideration. You need to be able to replace the strings. You have extra strings on hand, extra limbs, extra bolts for the crossbow. All of this stuff, these are what we call single points of failure. You have all of this equipment, but then you don't have the one thing that you actually need. So it makes the whole system unusable. So that's something very important. Knowing how to make your own things, going back to the primitive level.
We are affiliated with a 501c3 called We Are the 51%. This is based off of all the good people in the world giving extra effort to have a better way of life. You can donate, sponsor, or even make a tax-deductible payment to help these children to get food so no child goes to sleep hungry. How you can help is to go to our website, matt55.com. You go to the bottom right-hand corner of the video, then click the button that says Retail Customers. You can choose either option, the $5 or the $40 donation options. Either click the Add button below the dollar amount of which one that you choose. Then the next page, choose the quantity of the donation amount. For example, if you'd like to donate $1,000, then you can change the quantity amount to $200. Then click the Checkout button in the bottom right-hand corner, and then on the next page, enter your credit card information, name and address. We will send you out a receipt for the amount so you can write this off as a donation on your taxes or also on your business taxes. Remember, our main goal is $1 million to help sponsor 20,000 children. 1 billion people in the world will lose their life due to starvation due to the famine that has already begun by 2025.
In case I don't see ya, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.